The views and opinions expressed by the guest author or speaker during this live session are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Reader's Magnet. The content shared is for informational purposes only and does not constitute endorsement or promotion of any particular belief, ideology, or product.
Yes, hello, authors, book lovers, and storytellers. Welcome to another session here in Reader's Magnet's featured author interview. My name is Leah, and I'll be your interviewer for today. And with me is one of the Reader's Magnet's featured author. And today, he will be sharing to us what this book is all about, him as an author, and of course, what inspired him to write this book. So, yes, everyone, let's all welcome our one and only Mr. David O. Thomas, author of the book title, The Gordian Knot. Yes, hello, David. It's good to see you. How are you doing?
Doing fine, Leah.
Wow, that's good to hear. So, you know what, David, first of all, I would like to say thank you so much for choosing Reader's Magnet to be part of this journey when it comes to, introducing yourself, who you are as an author. And right now, you will be, we are very honored to be part of introducing your book that will be up and available very, very soon. So, thank you so much for that, David. And yes, before we proceed to more information about your book, of course, we would like to know who Mr. David O. Thomas is. So, a little bit of self introduction, please.
Well, as you could tell by my silver hair and gray beard here, I'm elderly. I am retired from Pima County. I had 34 years in criminal justice system. The first
Mm,
22 years, I was with the sheriff's department, and I was a detective and detective sergeant.
wow.
Uh, when I retired from there, I started with Pima County Adult Probation and spent a little more than 4 years as an adult probation officer. And then I was given a position with the Pima County Public Defender's Office as an investigator. I did investigations on that side, the defense side, for a few years, and then I was promoted to the supervisor of the investigations for the public defender's office.
Mm. Wow, that's interesting, David. Go ahead, yes.
I started writing years ago, just short things for my own amusement, and
Mm-hmm.
it was fun. It was satisfying, and then I started writing articles for my hometown newspaper. That also was very satisfying. But when I retired, I had more time on my hands than I anticipated. But also, I had some things I wanted to express about my experience.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, some of the problems that a detective encounters in
Mm-hmm.
the course of investigating a case and trying to uh, get it closed. It's not an easy thing to do.
Wow, that's amazing, David. So you know what? I believe that what you created right now, which is your book, is also based on your own experience about the field where you're in. So yeah, we wanted to know. Can you give us a bit of information of what the book is all about?
Sure. It's about two detectives, Frank Spencer and Mike Estrada. Frank Spencer is older and more experienced. He's the veteran. Mike
Mm-hmm.
Estrada is new to this level of detective work, but he was assigned to be Frank's partner and help him in his investigations. So
Mm-hmm.
the two embark on a series of murder investigations,
Wow.
and it
Mm-hmm.
becomes obvious that they are in pursuit of a serial killer. This is based on the fact that they're seeing the identical modus operandi, the MO, in every one of the crime scenes they go to. Well,
Mm-hmm.
they incur a lot of difficulties in conducting the investigation. Everything from interference from higher ranking command officers, lack of cooperation from the uh, courts, and of course, also dealing with the press. And at the same
Mm.
time, they struggle with different kinds of personal issues in their life. As Frank is, as I said, was a veteran, and he he's divorced. He's estranged from his family. He drinks a little too much, and he's very, very sarcastic. And Mike is young and eager, but he has a young family, and he is trying to juggle this new assignment and the demands that are put on him, and also
Mhm.
spend the time with his family that he should.
Wow, this is very interesting, David. I mean, this book, or your creation really delves into the themes of, let's say, resilience, the duty, and at the same time, the intricacies of police work. Because it really offers a very compelling, exploration of the human side of crime solving, especially that there's, let's say, the gripping crime kind of novel that follows the seasoned detective, Frank and Mike, as they really hunt a cunning serial killer, just like what you mentioned earlier. So, this fight, or let's say amidst their tense investigation, both of them, it really confront their personal struggles with, Frank's troubled marriage, it's just like what you mentioned, Mike's family. But this is actually an emotional toll of law enforcement at the same time. Wow, this is really interesting, David. Now, also, David, I know that this book of yours will be a successful creation, because this kinds of book right now is very famous, especially when it comes to solving a problem, crime solving, creating. I mean, having this kind of red hearings, which is very interesting for our audiences right now. Now, what was, or is there any part where you considered as the hardest scene to write, and why do you think that's the hardest part of creating this book?
Well, the actual murder scenes were. Excuse me, I'm going to take a drink.
Sure, you're fine.
My
Mhm.
mouth gets dry. The actual murder scenes and a lot of the investigative issues, and of course, the
Mhm.
problems dealing with the press and
Mhm.
with the commanders were easy for me to write because I had experienced them so many years.
Right.
But there's one part in the book where the um, antagonist, the serial killer, is preparing to go out and kill and is applying everything that was necessary for disguise.
Mm.
And the disguise involved makeup and a wig.
Mhm.
And I know nothing about that. So my wife sat right beside me as I wrote that whole chapter, telling me what was proper and what wasn't. Well, I would say that was the most difficult part.
Which is, yes, not knowing, about these makes up like disguise. But you know what, David, this is really, I mean, one of the interesting part that you've done in your book is really about the, it really requires a delicate balance of raw emotional depth, the authenticity to resonate with readers, because these kinds of topics right now are very sensitive, but at the same time interesting as well, because it also provides knowledge, of what's happening right now in our society. And you know what? It's actually a good thing, just like what you mentioned earlier, that you have your wife with you during the duration. I mean, for the entire duration of you creating this book, as her being your guide as well. If there are things that would be hard for you to write, or there are scenes, just like what you mentioned earlier. But this is so nice. It actually creates another bond between you and your wife as well.
Yes, it did.
Right. Uh-huh. Now, also, we're interested to also know, David, I mean, what differentiates your book from other books in the same genre, or let's say category? Because, just like what I mentioned earlier, there's already a lot of books out there who's also creating these kinds of, scene topics. So what do you think that differentiates your book from other books in the same genre or category? Same
Well,
topic.
I think there are a couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, One thing, of course, it's a mystery, and I attempted to construct this book in such a way that there is a surprise, of course, at the end.
I like
And
that surprise.
it, during the book, there are clues that are given to the reader, but
Mm.
some readers are quick to solve it, and some others that have read it, even those that have many years' experience as police officers, have been fooled at the end. So that was one aspect of it. The other thing is that I tried to bring in there is in that 34 years that I was involved with the criminal justice system, I was there at these scenes. I know the smell
Mm-hmm.
of death. I have attended autopsies to collect the evidence as the medical examiner
Oh.
performs the autopsy on the body. I have responded uh, what we call Code 3 with lights and
Mm-hmm.
siren to situations. And so I
Mm-hmm.
try to insert as much reality as possible. And
Mm-hmm.
I wanted the reader to get a sense of the fact that when you walk into the medical examiner's facility, you immediately
Mm-hmm.
have smells that are uh, not pleasant.
Wow, that you know what,
I
David?
wanted the
Uh-huh.
reader to understand and see. Oh, of course, at the scenes and investigating the scenes, the sights
Mm-hmm.
there are not pleasant. But you have to
Mm-hmm.
set everything aside and
Mm-hmm.
do your job.
Right. Keep going.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, that's really interesting, David, because again, it's, the authenticity there. I mean, here is really present. It's the authentic portrayal for of a police work, and at the same time, being detective, the detective life. Drawn from your own experience, these the real world that you're in, the experience of the criminal justice system. It really, for me, David, you know what, it really offers our readers a richly I must say detailed and realistic narrative, that creating these, I mean, opening up to the scenes. It really delves deeply into the personal struggles of being a detective, just like what you mentioned earlier, being in a room, you can smell the life and the death. It's really um adding the collaborative what dynamic between the seasoned battle worn senior detective, the eager young investigator, provides this kind of perspective on teamwork, mentorship. It's really a profound exploration, I must say, of personal and professional battles within the high stakes world of homicide investigation, mystery. And that's really one of the things that you've done in this book, David, because it's really captivating and interesting. Wow, that is amazing.
Well,
Now,
the other characters in the book too, I tried to make them different and interesting.
uh-huh.
But the killer, the serial killer,
Mm-hmm.
required a great deal more to understand what was going on. So prior to me writing this book, I bought every paperback book I could find on serial killers and studied
Mm-hmm.
to see what was going on with them, what drove them.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
put this into the book uh, in the character of the serial killer.
Wow, right. So it's not just about sharing your own experiences as a detective investigator, but at the same time, also providing knowledge to the readers on what does serial killer do. This the disguise, the things that they're currently doing, the when it comes to planning. Wow, this is really amazing because you know what, David, I must say that this is also this can also help people out there, especially family, that it would be let's say a guide, a guide to be very careful, to really have an eye on every people, because this is about safety as well, having or sharing this kind of knowledge. And for me, that is really something that's also important that you really highlighted on this book, you know and wow, this is just truly inspirational, David. Now also, David, we'd like to ask, because you sharing your own experience in writing this book, can you share to us maybe a bit about your journey as a writer?
Well, sure. As I said earlier, I began writing early on in my
Mm-hmm.
career with the sheriff's department. And the first thing I wrote was, shall we call it a fairy tale?
Mm-hmm.
This happened right before Christmas while I was still a rookie, a new detective. And right before Christmas, the sheriff put out a memo that told us that because of fiscal restrictions, we would no longer get on call pay and we were limited in our overtime pay.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, limiting the number of miles we could drive our cars because of the cost of gasoline. Well, I thought this was a terrible thing to do, but it also really stung when I realized that at the same time this happened, two of the majors, now these are bureau chiefs, two of the majors were having their offices completely remodeled with all new furnishings.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, that comes from a different part of the budget. I recognize that. But it just seemed to me that it was wrong to happen at that time. And I write this grim fairy tale. I went home, told my wife to go next door and share the Christmas spirit with neighbors while I sat down at a portable typewriter and banged this out. And I called it the grim fairy tale with one M. And
Mm-hmm.
it was about this kindly old king that liked to go around shaking the hands of the gentry. And he had two princes. And one day the exchequer approached the princes and said, "We have a big problem because the
Mm-hmm.
money is gone." Well,
Oh.
they huddled, they thought about it, and one of the princes came up with a perfect solution, that they would just take more from the peasants. There are a lot of peasants, so we'll take a little bit more from each of the peasants, and that will replenish the exchequer, and we can continue our lifestyle. Well, the king was thrilled with this solution, and he went about shaking the hands of the gentry. Well, I posted this on our bulletin board,
Mm-hmm.
and right near the bulletin board, we had a little area where we could get coffee or sodas or whatever. And I sat down, had a cup of coffee, and I started watching. Deputy after deputy stopped at the bulletin board, read this, took it down to where we had a copy machine to make a copy, and brought it back and posted it again. So it got great distribution, but this was done anonymously. No one knew who the author was. And as it turns out later, the sheriff assigned one of my friends, who he considered the best detective in the department, to figure out who this person was. And the
Mm-hmm.
detective never was able to solve this. And so naturally, the administration then thought it was that detective that had done it. But,
Oh.
but anyway, uh, I was thrilled to know that a lot of people appreciated that, and
Mm-hmm.
so I began to write short stories about the funny things that happen. In
Right, right.
now, when my
Mystery. Mm-hmm.
yes, when my academy class reached 20-year mark, that qualified us for retirement from the department, and so I I went to each one of the members that had survived the 20 years and asked them to relate to me their funniest story. And I wrote the story about whatever they had conveyed to me. And I had a good
Mhm.
friend who was a gifted cartoon artist, and he drew a cartoon for each one of these short stories. Then,
Mhm.
then the sheriff let me publish this and create a copy for each one of the survivors of the 20 years. And of course, we had a party and a big celebration to mark our anniversary. And I gave each one of the survivors a copy of the funny stories about everybody that they had been in the academy with.
Mm.
So I guess the next step was not until I had retired, and that's when I
Mhm.
decided I would take on the challenges of creating a novel.
Right. And that's one of the reason why you're here right now, David. So, ultimately becoming a successful writer or a novelist is really about dedication, resilience, and at the same time, really the passion for, sharing your unique perspective with the world, with your creation. That's amazing. Now, also David, let's say when it comes to creating characters, when it comes to creating characters, do you what draw the inspiration from real people's experiences, or are they entirely fictional? Because just like what you mentioned earlier, this is also based on your own story, which is this specific book we have right now. How about the other story when it comes to creating the characters?
I think the best way to put that is within the structure of any police agency, there is a chain of command. And in ours, it went from deputy to sergeant to lieutenant to captain and then to major, and then chief deputy and sheriff. And each one of the commanders had different personalities and had different reputations. And of
Mhm.
course, they developed um, either like or dislike among the people that were their subordinates.
Mhm.
So, in creating a character, it's kind of a combination. It's not
Mhm.
one person, but it's parts of several people to make one character. The same
Mhm.
is with even the medical examiner. There were several medical examiners here in this jurisdiction, and I got to know them all. But I created a character that had a bit of their personalities, but in that case, it was a totally different physical person. It was
Mhm.
older and had a very sarcastic wit.
Right.
So to answer your question, even detectives are
Mhm.
different in the way they approach things and what they prefer to do in the investigation of a case.
Mhm.
For Frank, I think Frank was a lot of me.
Right. So it's like often, you're creating an inspiration from real people to also, to add realism, and at the same time also crafting an entirely different, personalities to also suit the story's need. So wow, that's amazing. That's amazing,
Right.
David. Yeah, now also David, are you a meticulous planner, or do you prefer to let the story evolve as you write? What's your journey behind, creating, writing? How do
There
you do
again, there again in this book, it was a combination of both.
that? Okay.
I just began writing, and the reader will find out that I'm laying a lot of preliminary information
Mm-hmm.
about serial killers and whatnot to incorporate with their understanding of the cases.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just developing it from one to another.
Wow, I like that. Allow It's like you allow creativity and spontaneity to really shape the narrative as the story evolves, as
Right.
you write as well.
But
That's
then,
interesting.
but then
Yeah.
about 5 chapters into it, I realized that there was something missing.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
went back and I wrote the prologue
Mm-hmm.
to paint in something that was very necessary for the plot of this book.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And
Right.
so that part was done deliberately and thinking about the structure of it. So it was a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, also, David, just like what I mentioned earlier, your story, I'm gonna say that this is really a successful creation. Now, how does your background or your personal experience really influence the stories that you created?
In many, many ways. There were so many cases that I became involved with
Mm-hmm.
and so many investigations that were part of my life that I suppose to say that a lot of it is from my experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Every crime scene that I went to, every murder scene was tragic. It was bloody. It was how do I put this? Every one of them were different at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there were some cases where there was only one victim. There were other cases where I had several victims, and in investigating each one of these, they developed into different directions. There was a separate type of causation in each one of them, uh,
Mm-hmm.
separate type of perpetrator. Um, every one of them were the same in the respect that human beings died, but
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, it was different in the way the cases developed.
Mm-hmm. Wow. You know what? Your background, David, I must say that, your background and your personal experience, your experiences significantly influence the storytellings by really shaping the themes, or let's say the characters, just like what you mentioned earlier, the settings, or a different, perspectives, because it really influences these influences can really lead to the creation of more, relatable, nuanced characters and compelling plots as well, reflecting the real world that you're in, the real world complexities, and at the same time, the fostering empathy and understanding among audiences. So that's really amazing because that's what you're doing in this book. And wow, I am just so amazed. And you know what, David, I really wanted to acknowledge you because I know that creating a story like this, especially that, you've got this from your own experience, there might be some, let's say, emotional trigger, because just like you mentioned earlier, already facing life and death with your own experience as being a detective and investigator. Now, I'd like to ask David, before we end our session, do you have any message to our viewers out there, or let's say to our future you know we also have young audiences right now who might want it to be like you someday. So do you have any tips for them or any message to them? Yes.
Well, police work has changed drastically since I retired.
Mm-hmm.
Now everyone has a cell phone, and in that cell phone, everyone has a camera. So there are new challenges for the police officers in conducting their business because it seems like there's always some citizen that has the desire to record whatever's going on and try to present, and then later the news would try to present it in a bad light.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. The other thing is we've also seen in our statistics with the growth of our population that there is much more crime. Now, in the statistics, they like to make these up as ratios. So, like for instance, so many homicides per 100,000 people, and that kind of keeps it in perspective. But when you have more and more people, there are more and more murders. There are more and more robberies. There are more and more carjackings. There are more and more arsons. There are more and more sex crimes, and on and on
Mm.
and on. So it's a challenging career, and for me, it was very satisfying. Uh,
Mhm.
and what I would tell young people today is just realize that, particularly with some of the things my characters might have gotten away with in the book, that they would not necessarily be able to do.
Wow, thank you so much for that, David. Really appreciate it. And you know what? For our audience out there, so if you're the kind of person who wanted to, who's interested when it comes to the criminal justice system, this debut novel would be able to help you, develop, explore the themes of resilience, duty, and of course the complexities of police work amid personal turmoil. So yes, for our viewers out there, this book of Mr. David Thomas will be available very, very soon. And also, his website will also be up and running very soon. So, you may also follow him on a social media platform. And again, thank you so much, Mr. David Thomas, for gracing with us today. Really appreciate you for allowing Readers Magnet to be part of this journey. And yes, for our viewers, this is our author, Mr. David Thomas, author of the book, The Gordian Knot. Again, thank you so much, David. And yes, as we say it here in Reader's Magnet, we share your story with the world. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Leah.